Qantas has announced that it will hire about 8,500 new staff members over the next decade as the airline seeks to scale up its workforce. This is, of course, after it cut about 9,000 jobs during the pandemic when flights were grounded. Our business editor, Ross Greenwood, he's here with these breaking details. Ross, so what do you make of this announcement from Qantas this morning?
Kind of interesting because Qantas has been under significant criticism in recent times, not only because of the significant $1.4 billion profit that it made for the last 6 months, also, of course, going back reputational issues in regards to airfares, plus also on-time performance, flights being cancelled, bags being lost. In this particular case, go back to the pandemic. As a part of its plan to try and make certain the airline survived, it announced initially that it would sack some 8,500 workers. It said reduced. The reality was most of them were sacked. In the end, 9,800 Qantas staff were let go during that time, which saved the airline $1 billion. Now, keep that in mind, given the fact that Qantas has just reported a half-year profit of $1.4 billion. Now Qantas says, and this is about its on-time performance, the reliability of its aircraft, that it will rehire some 2,300 staff, many of them pilots, over the next 3 years. And indeed now says over the next 10 years, it will rehire 8,500 people. So this is a really interesting turnaround. The timing of this is kind of interesting too, because, you know, you go back into only just a week or so ago where Qantas announced this profit. This detail was not there amongst any of that information at that time. The timing here now is coming back in. So you just wonder what has transpired between then and now, around 10 days, to see the airline making such a significant announcement.
The stock market expected to start high today, Ross, after a choppy few weeks. And you're saying this might disguise something else, that the stock market reaction shows the risk of recession is rising, if not directly here, then certainly for America and around the world.
Yeah, it does. And I've got a few things to show you this morning just in regards to this. The first is basically to have a look at the performance of our stock market and also our Australian dollar. So in the past month or so, you can see that the ASX 200 was, above 7,500, now about 7,250. The change in that month is about 3.4%, so it's fallen. Now, the second thing is also to show you the dollar, because the dollar this morning has also had a significant change. Now sitting overnight, it actually at one stage with the actual 66s. You can see here the ASX over the past month down 3.4%. Go to the Aussie dollar now, and what you can see there is a similar thing. So the dollar was 70.7 cents, now 67.3. And as I say, at one stage was almost in the 66s overnight. And again, the same thing here, that big fall in the Australian dollar. And you can see it's even falling as we speak today, 67.3 US cents currently. Now, that also says something about interest rates here and around the world. So I've got some charts to show you this and a bit of technical stuff. This is what's called a yield curve. So it basically plots interest rates from short term to long term. This is the Australian yield curve, and it shows short term you get less, long term you get more. But have a look at those green and yellow lines. That's what rates were a month ago and 6 months ago. So you can see that interest rates on money markets are rising, still rising today. But still, that's what you kind of expect. You're going to get more if you invest long term. Let me show you the United States now, because in the United States right now, it's got what's called an inverse yield curve. In other words, you're getting more for short-term money, less for long-term money. And this in many ways is seen to be a precursor of a recession. Go to the UK, for example, you can see a similar story there. It's kind of flat, so it says the economy's not going to be very good. Now, there's interesting things here as well, because there's a professor in the United States, and that sort of, if you like, gives you a hint as to where it's going to go to, Pete.
Okay, but are those bond yield interest rate charts, Ross, are they any real indicator?
They are, and this is the reason why I want to just show you a professor in the United States, just quoted a little while ago, just to show you that yield curve. This is, Professor Campbell Harvey. In the past 50 years, there have been 7 inverted interest rate curves. This is in the United States, but the same would be true here as well. Every one of those has been followed by a recession. Now, get that? So therefore, if the United States is in recession, Australia also has tougher times. And though no recession is being forecast here in Australia at the moment, certainly economic growth is going to slow off the back of the ongoing interest rate rises and also the pressures that we're seeing in the Australian economy right now.
All right, but there are signs the stress is happening here in Australia, more than just a few signs too. Ross, reports today that households will see a 20% squeeze on their income, with wages being pushed up by inflation. More people will be pushed into that higher tax bracket. Energy prices, mortgages, the whole lot. And now there's the chronic shortage of new homes being built that adds pressure for rents.
Yeah, it does. Now, you think your way through all those things. You've got prices rising generally. You've got interest rates rising. You've got energy prices rising significantly. And then you've got people being higher wages pushed into higher tax brackets. Just one small thing, and that is housing starts basically at a 10-year low in Australia right now. And as you point out, that squeezes. The problem is at the back end of that, what do? You get a boom in house prices. So that's the if you like, the silver lining in all of this in the longer term.
All right. Ross Greenwood, good to see you as always. We'll chat to you soon.